So tell me about your dad. Describe him, what kind of a
Oh.
person he was.
He was born in Dubuque, had a father who died at 10 years age, so it's pretty crucial. He had a mother and a grandma who, they had two more aunts, Aunt Margaret and Aunt Stella. All these women had taught school at some time in there, and most of them sacrificed having a full education or because they had to give the money that would be spent on them, and they needed to give it to the men in the family so that they could get jobs and all that. My mom graduated from high school at 16 years of age and went immediately into the women's Chicago Teachers College and got a degree in 2 years and taught full-time, and then, and I can't tell you how many years, it was just a few. She loved it, loved teaching, they loved her. She sat at the kitchen table or the dining room table at night and helped me. Just amazing. He was very straightforward. He didn't have a father as such.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, his mom insisted that he attend the academy. That was like the lower class of the Loras College.
Okay.
So he could call across the street, just yell. And when he was sent, my mom said she made him go to that school since he didn't have a dad. Other men would take care of that. He said he yelled across the street, "Mom, can I come home?" "No, William, stay where you are." "Mom, can I, come on." Well, he grew up very quickly. All his friends were boys, and most of them were studying to be the priesthood, which was very common at that time. My dad was he was honest, he was very loving, wonderful sense of humor, and a respect for men and women, treated women, and he was such a good dancer. Mom said that when the country club would have a party, one woman said, "Oh, I hope Bill Blake asked me to dance. He's the best dancer at the club." And we went, "Oh, Dad's a great dancer." And he was good. And my mom tells the story of sitting, and she said back then they rolled up the rugs. They were watching not to get reported for drinking, but and Mom would be the person sitting at the piano, and she could had perfect ear for music. She's playing the music as the couples are circling, and Bill Blake is circling not once alone or two alone. It was a good number.
Mm-hmm.
And people smiling, and then, "Oh, Catherine, he's wonderful." And Catherine's on the bench, playing the music. So she said they had quite a discussion going home that night, that he would not be providing music all night for other people.
Mm-hmm.
He liked to dance and all that. Anyway, they like to tell the story on that. They went through the Depression, and he had a degree. That's it. He put himself through Loras, and then he got a job with a Chicago Title and Trust Company. And, but Mom said at that point, you men always dressed as business people, you know, they would wear a suit or that. And she said you would check before you sent something to the cleaners, you checked to make sure that there was maybe money sitting there, or the worst thing was the pink slip. If they got that, that was a notice that they were going to have a decrease in their income.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my dad was hiding, you know, he didn't want to show Mom, and she said she finally, she learned to check his clothes but they got through it. Their parents came one day, she said they came with a bag of groceries. They took the bus from the west side of Chicago to the south side. Mom went and opened the door, and there was my grandma and my grandpa, and they were carrying foods. They knew the pantry would be low.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, you know, they had it, but nobody was complaining. That was normal. That was just normal that you hold back. We learned how to treat other, you know, adults, welcome them in our home. We had tears, but not that many. No.
Describe your mother. Describe Kate.
She was great. She was smart, very smart, and the music was all in her head. She didn't need lessons. And she said, an uncle surprised them all, and when Mom had made her first communion, he arrived with a piano for my mom, and she went so far, but she didn't hesitate to tell people to, you know, be careful. But she was a giggler. I mean, if you went someplace where someone was goofing up or making a terrible mistake, and you were trying not to smile or even, but then if you made eye contact with her, you lost it. Both of you did. You know, you should have left church before it started because you were going to giggle through it. Anyway, that's...
And where did she go to school then? Where did she go to college?
She went to Chicago Teachers College.
Okay.
Yeah.
And probably at that time it was like a 2-year teacher certificate, something.
And she was qualified. She said back then too, teachers were allowed to. Mom really was like the mathematics part of teaching, but knew the grammar part, and you did not screw up I and me and E, and we don't, what language are you using, you know. She's a classy lady, you know, funny. Oh gosh, I lost her one day and couldn't, she's still living in an apartment, and I went to her apartment, and she wasn't in. I kept looking for her, and then I came out of her building and saw this line of cars coming down the road in the distance, but coming. Well, the grocery bags were in that car, and it was at one end of the parade, I called it. But that was it. I saw her. I thought, oh, hi, Mom. Remember me? I was just at your house, and where have you been? I haven't seen you. She also misstepped and went down some steps, and she could have killed a passenger who, by the way, didn't ride with her anymore after that. And I was working at the time and had to call her and say, Mom, get in the house and don't do that again. I'll take you to the store, you know. And but she was funny, but she was smart, and my dad was so proud of her. He said, your mother, she was the belle of the ball, you know. She said, he'd say, oh, and he told her too that she should get busy and buy one of those pantsuits. You don't need to wear a skirt on the golf course. And she's a good golfer. And But he said, go ahead. So she went out and bought an outfit, and they were just coming in, to see a lady in slacks. Oh my gosh, that was something else. But my dad loved it all. It was,
Yeah.
and men loved him. And he also was a Big Ten football referee for 25 years, and had the greatest bunch of friends. And he thought my brothers were the funniest guys in the world and the nicest guys, and he loved parties and wanted people in our house. And he bought me my first pair of ice skates. It was terrible, but he took me to a sporting goods store and said, have you got something shiny and bright for this little lady that I brought with me today? And I thought, oh gosh. And then my mom, she went through teacher's college, and the money she saved went to her brother's education.
Mm-hmm.
He went on to be an executive, a very popular person at the newspaper, New York paper, and we laughed a lot, but when there were sad times with friends, anybody, but we didn't hesitate, but we couldn't be. My dad said, you can kid, but be careful, because not everybody knows how
Mm-hmm.
to handle
Mm-hmm.
humor. The kids loved it. That was fun. We'd hear stories sometimes of families that split up because somebody didn't like somebody else and all that. I honestly can say I couldn't tell you, I couldn't remember any time when we were on the outs with the branch of the family. It just didn't work out that way. We loved sports. Whether you were talented or not, we prayed a lot. People prayed for, back then, you could go to any church, and, it's great. It's great. They had friends forever and ever, just same thing that Jim and I are enjoying now. It was great. And our friends liked our parents. And we didn't, I don't think we recognized that or even found it unusual, but we found out later that sometimes those were the kids that spent a lot of time at our house, because
Mm-hmm.
but we never criticized the other kids' parents or anything. We didn't have that kind of a problem, but I don't know. I think our kids grew up loving them, thinking they were the best people. And they could be goofy. One year, somebody, for our kind of grab bag thing that we used to do way back then, somebody brought a dart set. Aunt Mary that was Uncle George, yours wife, she decided it was in the living room.
Mm-hmm.
And the next thing we knew, Aunt Mary had picked up one of the things in this game and tossed it at the mantle. Well, there was a little yelling, Helen, Mary, wait. And she's wondering why everybody's calling to her. We didn't kill her, but they did cut off her liquor after that. Aunt Mary's, don't let Aunt Mary touch the Oh, gosh. Oh, and she did, I had a little problem with the mathematics, and the nun approached me and said, there was something I was unable to do in the math field. And the nun said, well, your brothers could do this. And I didn't know enough this was 5th grade, so it was crucial socially, standing at the blackboard. And I got through the rest of the day and got home. And of course I told my mom what happened. And she went to the telephone and she called the principal and said, you will not put one of our children against another when it comes to these, problems. And you can't do that to our children. We got a call right away. Sister Mary got called to the office, and the big, important principal called Mom and said, apologize. And Mom said, you can't do that. You can't do that to students and humiliate them. And okay, we started with Bill, then Tom, then George, then Michael. I came after George. And then Michael, only girl in this family with these boys.
Mm-hmm.
And it was 1936, 6/26/36. 1920, 36, yeah, 26. My brothers, when I was born on that day, they were nice enough to run up and down our street, ringing the doorbells and telling the neighborhood that I had been born.
Funny.
That we got a girl.
Yeah.
And they all reported back, of course, to my mom and dad, who got a kick out of it. And some even mentioned the Blessed Virgin. They said, her name is Mary Catherine, and she's named after the Blessed Virgin.
Catherine, but where did you first get the MC moniker? Was that from your family?
Yeah, they started right away. They went around the neighborhood saying, named after the Blessed Virgin, and to the Jewish neighbors and to the Polish neighbors who were fighting all the time. We used to laugh about it. They're at it again, Mom. Oh, my brothers are gone, and they could tell you stories. Oh, that was bad, because it was supposed to be Joan Patricia. That was supposed to be my sister, and it wasn't. And my brothers marched around cheering, and they were so obnoxious. But my dad, he just scooped me up, and got a wonderful sister. Time with my mom and dad. Yeah, I can remember I loved it.
Yeah.
If I could be with my dad, just by myself.
Yeah.
And he'd take me for ice cream. He took me to Dubuque. He carried my First Communion dress and me, and we went to Dubuque because my grandma couldn't come to my First Communion. She had had a stroke, but she could sit at the window at her home on the second, and she'd go up to the second floor and she could look out. My dad had dressed me at another church in the white outfit.
Yeah.
So I looked like a queen, and she could see me and wave to me on that. And then we got in a car afterwards and we headed out, and my dad said, "Hey, Toots," that's what he'd call me. He said, "Let's go past this place I want to show you." Well, it was a car dealership. And there was one car sitting in this, and I can't tell you what street it was in Dubuque, but anyway, it was a new car now, and I'm looking at him, he is too, and I said, "No, yeah, well, let's go home." Well, he said, let's go inside. We went inside, and about a half hour, maybe more, my dad said, we're going to get in that car. He had already set it up to buy it. He hadn't told anybody, and I was getting to be the first one in the family that we, and this was not that long after the Second World War,
Yeah.
they finally started selling cars again. So we rode home. I got to sit in the front seat next to my dad, and he was thrilled in a new car. The Second World War, that was an early memory.
Okay.
Our house was crowded. We had, our grandma lived with us. Her brother would come from St. Louis. He was not married, did not have a family. He'd move in with us. He'd leave hot, hot, where was I at that time? What part of the world? It was a case of where the weather, the Second World War had just ended.
Okay.
And so, I'm losing it here.
What was
Okay.
the hot that he would leave? Oh, you mean
Oh,
the,
he'd
the
leave
heat
St.
of
Louis
St. Louis?
to come up to Chicago because it was cooler in
Mhm,
Chicago.
mhm.
Well, it wasn't. Anyway, he took a bedroom. Now, this was a 2-bedroom, maybe it was 3 living room. Yeah. The point was, my grandma had to have a private
Mhm.
bedroom also. Well, the boys could all be in the, it was like a summer cottage, but with heating in it. They lived in that area of the house, which was very small. And boys didn't mind sitting on top of each other. But I had to sleep in the living room, and my dad would carry me out. Now that was one of the early things. He would call me out at the time of night when it was time to go. Come on, Huts, come on, Toots, and pick me up and carry me out, and I'd be on the
On the couch. And
couch
Then,
till morning, and then I wake up and go in and get dressed, and everybody's going every which way. But that was my early, and it got to the point where I heard my dad say, "She's getting heavy. I'm not going to be able to do this for long." And Mom said, "Oh, Bill, yeah, Bill, you can do anything." So I managed to get through that phase. I was talking to some of the kids and said it was just a different time. People were so glad that the war was over.
Yeah.
And people, we got to know people who had been in the Army or the Navy. Saw my first poor man, Mr. Keldon Sheridan, and he sat on a porch across from us and just stared into space. Now I was a little girl and I'm looking across, and I said to my mom and grandma, what's wrong? He doesn't talk. And when I take a walk and say, "Hi there," or, Mom explained to me what, she said he was in the service and something happened to his brain, and this is the way
Mhm.
he's going to be, and his mother is taking care of him. And oh boy, that was an eye-opener. And I remember too, in the same era, we had captains who were in charge of the block, and they went around and they'd tell you to put your sheets, or put your lights out, sit in the dark during the raid or the blank raid or whatever, pretend raid, German raid. And June, now I look back on it, and the man next door, Gene, and I can't think of the last name, but they were a Jewish family, which was very normal at that time and in the South Shore area of Chicago. And he would go up and down the street and say, say good night, turn your lights off, and all that. So I think we all knew, we were all afraid, but we didn't have anybody in the family who was overseas. That came later on as my brothers got older.
What were the changes, or what was the difference with the war? What did you?
Oh, I think people appreciated life and people losing their, and young people losing their lives. And us, I was scared. I do remember I told my mom, or asked her this question. I said, I'm scared. I'm so scared.
Sure.
And she said, why are you scared? What is it that's scaring you? And I said, well, I don't want to die. And she, that's what she needed to hear at 10 o'clock at night from the kid lying on the couch and everybody else in a bed. Anyway, Mom said, well, all you have to do is pray. You pray, and we pray to the Blessed Virgin and to Joseph and all that, and all those people. And I didn't buy it. I wasn't a good reader anyway, so the print was pretty small in the Bible. Anyway, I just, I don't know. People were frightened, people were proud of, and families were reunited. And then we found 25 years later, going through that with our own kids, and all four of my brothers served in the armed forces. And my dad's dad died when my dad was 10 years old.
Oh.
So there was no, he didn't even remember much about his dad. His wife had been a school teacher, and when they did get married, we all chuckled because they dated a while. They dated for 15 years. My grandpa and his wife, they didn't want to rush into anything. Didn't see too much of them because, again, they were in Dubuque. We were a big bunch of kids in Chicago, and that's where my dad's work was, and that's where. So we didn't see too much of them, but enough that it was great. We knew their personalities. We knew Uncle George. My brother Bill tended to run into trouble sometimes, and he was playing golf, and he was playing golf in the living room.
So how would you define trouble? Playing
Uncle
golf
George,
in the living room.
Playing golf in the house, which would still be bad, even if Uncle George wasn't there. We didn't play sports unless my folks were out for a while. Well, Uncle George, Uncle, my grandma's brother was sitting on the sofa, like this, and Bill took a shot. Can't tell you which iron he used or anything, but he hit my uncle's the bone here on your,
His shin.
Yes, right down the middle of that. And he said, Catherine, he yelled to my mother, that kid will go to prison, that kid. You know what he's done? And I don't know how my mom stood it, I don't know how she did it. She had a good sense of humor. She had to have a good sense of humor. And my dad kept saying to her, Catherine, they're good kids. They're good. We can trust them. She'd say, oh, no, Bill, we can't. We need a babysitter. No, we can look at they're able, They went out, came back in, and the first thing they noticed was that 2 crystal vases had been on the mantle when they went out. Well, they were off the mantle. They had fallen or been knocked off just that very night. I told you we couldn't trust those kids. Oh, God. That went on till they were probably starting to drive the car, and they didn't have any keys or didn't have any right to be driving. So that was then. I think the war made people different, but we were lucky. Yeah, we had family, good, yeah, no. Actually, we were in Gary, I guess. It was, the high school was. And it was, I had a lot of other students say, no, my mom or my dad said, you don't need to go to college. If you do, you're going to end up after 2 years and you'll have to baby and then you won't go back anyway. And they were really, I got a lot of attention as people said, you know, why are you going to college? I said, well, my mom and dad both went to college, and you know, and we just knew it was, and we were able to do it. It was a time when we could do it, but they made sacrifices to send us to the parochial school because the Catholic schools were so crowded after the war. What?
So tell me about life at Clark. What was that like?
Oh, that was very strict from the standpoint. Great educationally. The nuns all had degrees. You couldn't be a BVM nun if you didn't have, you know, your degree. So that was appreciated. And then we just kept going along, taking courses, and the nuns tried to guide us into different fields. Well, that was the Catholic Women's College, you know, just right across the street from the Loris guys. So we did lots of things together, but not in class. They were so hung up on the men being, they thought the men were smarter is what it was. Well, they found out real quick who smart is. Clark and Loris, it was fun. And again, treating people, you know, taking care of them. After dinner on the weekends, we had different nuns where well, each month we had a nun who was in charge of us, and we were close to her. And we'd go into the big entryway after dinner on the weekends because we couldn't go out. We couldn't date during the week. And so, but we'd go in and then sit down with the nun of the night, as we called them. And she just went along and said, what are your plans? Where are you going to be? Okay. Now we're a sister. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not working out. That's okay. But they had to tell us where we were going. And we used to complain to the nuns about it. And they said, your parents are spending a lot of money to give you a chance for an education. So you can go out and earn some money, you know. So they said, oh, so we need to know where you are and when you are there. Now, I had an aunt that loved us dearly. It was my mom's son, no, my mom's brother, yeah. His wife, that Aunt Helen, I was at Clark College and I received a letter, and enclosed it was a check, and it was for $85. Now that was really a lot of money. I had never seen a check like that before.
Mm-hmm.
And I right away called Mom and said, Aunt Helen Lilly, if you had two by the same name, you had to do the maiden or Maxim name. Anyway, she wrote a very meaningful note and said she was so glad that I had decided not to pursue a job or a future as a nun, which was very common with Catholic girls. Anyway, well, we all kind of chuckled that, she's paying me to not be Catholic, and you just didn't do that. Anyway, next thing I knew, her husband, how did this happen? He did something. I must have done something. And he just praised me like crazy. And I thought, two people in the same family, one saying, way to go, girl,
Mm-hmm.
and the other one, I think that the tuition was $1,300 a year at Clark. That number, and that was a big. Jim had a job at Loris washing or cleaning up after all the meals.
How did you meet? Tell me about the meeting.
He was dating. He had a few dates with one of my roommates. I had 2 or 3 roommates, and girls, they just sit and talk about the guys the whole time. So, someone said, "Yeah, he's a nice guy." I said, "Oh, okay." Well, then we had a dance that came up, and it was called the Sophomore Soiree. And we decorated all these girls. Well, Steph, who was my friend from high school, had a couple dates with him. And it was funny because she said, I said, well, what's he like? And she said, oh, he's nice. I said, are you serious? And she said, no. She said, I think he's going to be a priest. And I said, oh, yeah, a lot of them do. They had the seminary right next door. The boys were all nice guys. That was great. So anyway, then I met her before I went into the convent. Lasted 8 days in the convent and went to the Mother General and said, I got to get back to Clark.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I want to start on the sophomore year, and now because they're starting. So that's how they welcomed me back. The nuns were great. They were good.
So tell me about meeting Jim and what you did during college.
Yeah. Well, then he came to, like 2 nights in a row, we had what we called the dances that you called at that time, soiree or something like that. Anyway, he stopped by, and I was taking tickets, and I said, oh, you're here again. Okay. I said, she's not back yet. Steph hasn't come back yet. And he said, oh, okay, yeah. So I didn't think anything of that. Well, then the next thing I know, he asked me if I wanted to dance with him, and I said, sure. Then he asked if I wanted to go to a movie. That was it. Yeah, so basically, he was depositing me at the front desk at Clark as I was signing in for my date with him, as Tiff was getting off the Zephyr train to come back. But it didn't cause any problems because she said I wasn't planning on, pursuing any.
Yeah.
So, so we have it, but he didn't have a car. I didn't have Clark. They couldn't have a car. We had movies. They were reasonable. You could go without worrying about the crapola stuff that's out today, or any day at that time. It was a good time, and then we started to realize that, and he had to sign up for the um, the draft. And so I remember a friend saying, we were getting ready to graduate. She said, what are you in gym? Or what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm going to teach, and he's going into he'll be drafted. She said, oh, I didn't even think, how long have you been dating him? I said, oh, about 3 years. Yeah, I really like him and all this. So he went off to basic training and then came back and got assigned to the Army and intelligence thing, and went off, and I went and taught for a year. We had a party. There were Loris guys and George was a Notre Dame graduate, and that Christmas we had a mixed party of high school friends hooking up with the other colleges and all this sort of business. And so I met him at Union Depot on January 8th. And he was going on to Washington, D.C., and I was going back to Clark. And then I waved to his friends from the train as they waved to see what I looked like. You know, I was getting the once over, and I was giving them the once over. And once again, we just lucked out, met, just kept meeting great people. One-bedroom apartment. I got pregnant immediately. I was pregnant on I think my mother to this day, if she was alive, would say, you know, you did that before. And we didn't. It's crazy, but we didn't. And we started in Baltimore, and Jim, we got a little apartment, 3rd floor. I tried to do some teaching, and the kids were Army brats, and how old are you? Are you old enough to be teaching us? And I thought, I could go live with my brothers, and it'd be more fun than you jerks. Anyway, so, but that was fine. Jim had a great experience with the guys. They went.
Well, tell me about your experience. So then, how soon is Kathy born after then?
Right away.
Yeah.
She was born, yeah. She was born, I can't remember the dates, but it was right away. She was, in fact, I didn't realize I was pregnant till we were at the place, commissary, is that where the grocery store and all that. We came to the checkout thing, and how he got this question, I don't remember, but my condition came up, and he turned to me and said, I guess we had something, we had a sign, or how many people in the family, I can't remember what the deal was. Anyway, oh, I know, he went to give me the money, and I fainted right there in the checkout lane, and it was quick, and I got up, and I'm like this, and he took the checkout guy took one look at me, and he said, "Are you pregnant by any chance?" And I said, "Yeah, just." And he said, "I can't take it. You stand over there. I'm taking you out. I gotta go out,
to assist you, yeah.
To the car." And he said, "You have to sign this saying that within so many days you will have established an appointment." He said, can't, if we notice that somebody, you know, I said, I was so dumb, didn't realize it. It was the friends,
Yeah.
people that we met, and some were like us,
Yeah.
who were the nomads, as we refer to ours. But for the most part, the jobs were good, and then we started to meet families. We moved from, well, Mary Jubek said, wait till you see the gal who's, my brother had called, Mike called and said, hey, I've been interviewing, you know, for radio or TV for sports. And I said, and he said, I've got a response from, where did we go? Evansville. And I said, I'll take you out to lunch tomorrow. And I said, okay, oh, wouldn't that be neat? Now, he had just gotten out of Vietnam and Iowa City and all this sort of business. So, well, make a long story short, he got an offer, and then he moved in with us, which was a real mistake because he's a clown, and he still is a clown, and always was a clown. And so the dinner hour was crazy and all that. But he announced he was going to come to Evansville. He was accepting a job. Well, in the meantime, we met. John Duvik was on the west side. We were on the east side. But they had us for dinner, and this was before we hadn't sold the house yet, I guess. Anyway, they had a baby. Their Michael was the baby, and we had Tom. And we just clicked right away. They were crazy and fun. And the only bad thing was Mary. She couldn't stand Evansville. She missed St. Louis, and that was tough for her. I knew we were in trouble because one of the first people I met at her house asked where I had come from, and I said oh, I was born and raised in Chicago. And she said, oh, you must be enjoying our trees. And I thought, oh, wait a minute, have I missed something, you know? So then I looked at Mary and I thought, oh, Mary, go for to St. Louis, we could be in problem. There was a woman, Jim was so typical because he surprised me with this. He said, we'll find out what the weather's going to be. Well, out comes this woman dressed as a guy, tall, skinny, and, you know, and her name, okay, give me a chance. She's a meteorologist, and what was her name? Anyway, she said, you know, this is going to be a bad night. Now, this is going to be a really bad night. They're predicted storms and all that. And, said, oh, that's bad. Yep. And it could be a gully washer. That's what it's going to be. It's going to turn into a gully washer. You know, I looked at Jim and I said, where the hell did they find them and why are we here? But anyway, so we got to go to Evansville, and then from Evansville to Cleveland. Yeah, well, we had Glen Ellen first. That was it. Yeah. I'll get it at the end. We met nomads like us. I got Jim elected. The pastor asked if we would, since we were new, would we help raise money? And so we said we would do a night. Back then, you did the party.
Casino night?
Casino night.
Yeah.
Well, the priest loved that money, And then he had like 12 new people,
Mm-hmm.
and we immediately, Jim, we had a list of people to call, and Jim called this one man, and Jim explained, I'm trying to raise some money. We're new here, and we know you need money, and would you help us out? And the guy said, young man, where have you been? We need you so badly. Well, we brought in over $1,000, I think, or close to it, but because they were flabbergasted. But right away, we were king and queen with everybody, and the schools were good. The next meeting we went to as newcomers, I got in the car and I said, I think I have a friend. Jim said, I think I have a friend. Well, it was Mary and Bill Sherry. Those two guys were over there, Mary and I were over here. And it was, again, and some of the people were natives, and some were like us, nomads. And I think the only thing I can say is, God had a plan for us. The world was better than it is. This is such a scary time. It's hard to.
What scares you about right now?
I'm scared. I just am afraid I don't have much time. And it was hard to, this group of people that we've prayed each other through, and their grandparents through, and all that. And it was like you have your shoes off,
Yeah.
or that type of thing. And yet, we're so lucky. We haven't had kids who have said, I'm never coming back here again, or I'm not going to, do this, or I'm not going to do that. I said, Lizzie, she hit the nail on the head. She took me shopping when when she was first able to take me to Jewel. And we got everything took home. Tiff called me. I don't know how soon she said this to Tiff, but she said, Mom, it's really fun to shop with old people.
What did Liz say to Tiff?
Oh, yeah. It's fun because all the old peoples are so nice. And they're nice to me, to the person pushing the car, and it's just really nice. They said, the old people, the other old people take care of them. And all Jim could see was the money thing, because Jewel was the most expensive thing. She loved every place. That's the only word I can think of. Is love. And boy, we got such a and still do to this day. And I'd hear the kids, if I'd say some comment to somebody coming out of Jewel or, grocery list or something like that, the kids would respond too. So they had been listening to me, what I thought of whatever it was we were buying or something. Grandma, do you got that? Each one was, I asked Mike, I said, Michael, while I'm in this aisle, will you pick up some grape juice? It's me. Yeah, Mom, fine. Well, off he goes. And of course, it's in his hand is the phone, and he's talking to somebody on the team or the principal or whatever. I lose him in Jewel. Going on the aisle. Cub, come on, Cub. Oh, yeah, Mom, I got him. I said, I've done 2 rows and you're still, oh, golly. It's love. And sometimes it hurts. And you asked me what worries most. I would like to stay healthy for a longer period of time. I don't want to go. I have faith, but we haven't got Jim's doing so well that maybe now he'll go back to church and,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's, I realize we have so many wonderful friends and there are so many committees that we started or we were on, and the education we got from our parents, we can't complain.
Well, just remember, faith doesn't require attendance at church.
No, that's right. I
You
know.
can practice your
But
faith every
see-
day.
Yeah, I know.
So.
Those are the kind of things you have to just let it go. And I was good at telling people, as a chairman of a Bible study group,
Mhm.
I could sit there and say, let him go. It doesn't matter if he's at church or not.
Mhm.
The point is, if he comes and sits like this and you say, you're still going to love him and you're going to accept him. Treat people as a gift from God. Now, sometimes things come that are really horrendous. And if we can drop all our other thoughts and hiccups and all this sort of business and learn to say, can I help you? Or, I think you might be on the wrong track. Or do you think I'm not on the wrong track? Maybe I'm not. And reach out, look at the person. That's what moving around. I asked Tom this. I said, did you find it hard to keep going to different schools? And he said, no. He said, it was really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, that's okay. And they didn't care what their jobs, they did, they cared, but they did such a good job. The gal stood outside in front of Jewel one day and said, you're Tom's? And that's when you had to
Actually be a cashier.
Cashier. And she said, he's the best employee we have.
Yeah.
She said, he's honest, that he's prepared, he comes in here, he's rushed, he's ready to go. He handles people well. He's pleasant, but he doesn't stand and talk in the house. Aunt Susie, he gets them in, gets them out, and they acted like, And many a night we went someplace and had to pick them up from a job late at night,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure some people probably thought we were hard, but no.
If you had one day to live, how would you spend it?
Oh,
Like your best day?
I think to be united with my family as it was when we were all still, we've always been, but I mean, the 8 of us, 8 people,
Mhm.
or how many we were presented, that we had the ability to raise children, to create children, to help people, to make a difference in lives,
Mm-hmm.
and find out that there's that a silly little, you like those cookies and they're the most expensive thing in the store, right, but I gotta take them home, Just reaching out to people in silly ways. I do it all. I would do it all starting with the job, moving, and the meeting. We never would have been, if we hadn't met all the people.
Right.
And then they shot out from, just simple ways. and teaching them to look people in the face, to laugh, to smile, and to pray. But like you say, God knows, He knows. He's just, I don't know what I'm not ready to die, but I still want us to be together, our group.